Welcome back to the Manor Entropians. Julian McBain here, and we are back on the trail of Halloween Mayhem. And the reason that the clock was started before I started the video is because I hit a wrong button and ended up touching the statue when I meant to not. So, oops. I have switched back to the LB30. At least I thought I had. So let's do this. See, LB35 isn't doing us a whole lot of good. It's actually more of a detriment than it is a help. And then we're going to quickly down some pills. Consume. Consume. And consume. What the hell? Make me a pill popper. Poppity pop 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 poo. Oh, he's stuck on that damn tree. That's annoying. Come on. Here, little zombie. There, now I'm doing full damage. I know I lost a lot of time using the 35, which is a damned shame. Got some good skills. But I think this is going to be far more efficient. No, I don't think I know this is going to be far more efficient. 94 pack. Ugh. Overall, Mayhem's doing is going all right. I mean, my score could be higher, but you know, that's kind of part of the RNG. But as far as like weapons go, and you know, I learned a powerful lesson by using a weapon that I wasn't ready for. My bad. I should know better. I've only been doing this for 2 years, but it happens. So, that is what it is. I still have the 6 boxes I had from earlier. Move these down here just so we can tell how many boxes we ended up with. Oh yeah, I could have used my last Easter egg. Maybe I'll save that for Easter Mayhem. Or at least for, Merry Mayhem. At least, because in Merry Mayhem, we're just going to be, like, completely flat out. I am glad for all of the scourging skills I have gotten since starting this. I think I was mutant looter 14, and now I'm 16. So, not gonna complain. Since this video is taking place of my Saturday vlog, you know, Mayhem is always going to take priority over other forms of video for Entropia Universe. Hang on. Sorry about that. It will always take priority because it's a special event. And so I did want to kind of talk about something vloggy today. Since I'm kind of, you know, now that I've changed kind of the format of how my Entropia universes operate. Entropia universe, the videos operate. Wow. And kind of talk about more of a vlog subject today. Because I realized, so I've been watching a lot of news, and I mean, frankly speaking, you got to keep up with current events. As much as I don't necessarily enjoy it, you got to keep up with things because the world's going completely nuts. But I needed to kind of pull myself out of that for a little while, and so I've been listening to more Jordan Peterson, Cue the Surprise. And you know what, if you don't like the fact that I talk about what the guy's lectures are and everything and the things I pull from it, you can blame Lorespay because he's the one who introduced me to the guy. So, but anyway, I've been listening to a couple of lectures he gave in Iceland on his book 12 Rules for Life, and the book 12 Rules for Life fundamentally changed my life. And that's not an exaggeration. I have worked through a lot of the resentment, a lot of the negativity that had entered into my life by reading his works and by listening to his lectures and by implementing to the extent that I can at this point in time the things that he suggests. And it's one of the things I continue to work on, right? And I use that in conjunction with other strategies with which to put my life back together, because there's the theory that I have that Dr. Peterson says that it's the solution to the tragedy of life, and I don't buy that life is a tragedy. There are a lot of tragic things that happen, but I don't buy that life itself is a tragedy, because that means that existence fundamentally does not have meaning. And to me, that is a very nihilistic way of looking at things. And nihilism is one of the things that caused so many of the horrors, or it's one of the contributors to the horrors that happened in the 20th century, which thankfully I am young enough to have only caught the tail end of. And there are horrors going on now, but nothing even close to comparable to the things that happened in the 20th century. I mean, in the 20th century, you had World War I, which was the last, and I hate to use this term, it was the last gentleman's war. And what I mean by that is it's the last war where the old medieval courtesies were still they were still exercised. It's where aristocrats still fought each other and were willing to follow a code of rules. It was the last war with a code of conduct that was similar to that used in the Middle Ages. And so, but that was where we discovered that, using chemical weapons isn't a good thing. And so, mistakes were made at the end of that war, and that created World War II. And of course, we know about the Holocaust, and that in itself was a complete horror, just horrific things that humans can do. And then you have the horrors of the Soviet Union and the gulags, and you have the imprisonment of the kulaks from Ukraine, and then the ensuing famine that happened there, and then you have the famines and what was the name of it? It was Mao's Great Leap Forward, and between the two, something like 100 million people died. And then you have the massacres that were perpetuated by Pol Pot, and then you have the ones that happen in Myanmar and in Rwanda. And it's just terrible, terrible things happen. And I have the feeling that part of the reason that those happen is because the people that were involved allowed kind of a spirit of nihilism to enter into their lives where nothing else matters. And so, to me, that's something that we need to avoid. I mean, there's a kind of joking nihilism that my generation, I'm a millennial, I'm 35, and because of the prevalence for things like suicide in my generation, and I'm really glad I'm not monetized because I know this video wouldn't get monetized. There is a preponderance of nihilism, even in almost in jest, right? It's a very dark sense of humor about death, about existence, and But you got to be careful, because if you don't take the time to actually look at the systems that you put in place, if you allow those feelings to embed themselves in you and it stops being a joke, then you start to pull yourself apart at a conceptual level. And I'm finding that is something that is too easy to fall into. And therein lies the way to tragedy. So okay, and the reason I mention all these things, so like, I read the book and I started putting my life back together, because it incrementally started to reduce the amount of negativity in my life. And so I started with Dr. Peterson's book, and then I went and I read the quintessential book to business success. And it's old. We're talking 1920s, and it's playing on the foundations of a philosophy that is much older than it. If you actually read the prints, the seeds of this foundation, the forms, the cornerstones of it are actually even in Machiavelli's The Prince, taken out of a business context and put into a political warfare context. You can find the aspects of it in Sun Tzu's The Art of War. And the name of the book it's Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And so, coming from, okay, I need to do things to release the negativity and the resentment in my life, and then I need to figure out how I'm going to put that life together so that it is a much stronger position than I was in yesterday. And that plays to one of the rules, because one of the rules, one of Dr. Peterson's rules is don't compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And so that's very important, because too many people play the game of keeping up with the Joneses. There's no benefit to trying to keep up with the Joneses. If you are not ready to be in that spot, that's not where you need to be. You need to focus on where you are now and what the next step is in this iterative system that you have. You know how I am on iteration, to get to that grand quest that you have out there in life. And so okay, I took the advice of Dr. Peterson and I went into Think and Grow Rich. And by amalgamating the two pieces, because I think they're really two pieces of the puzzle. Dr. Peterson lays the groundwork. He's the foundation. Without that foundation, the building cannot stand. You have nothing to build the pillars upon. So you have to work out the aspects of 12 Rules for Life in order to be able to have a foundation with which to build upon. And then once you get that foundation laid out, and the forms are set, and the concrete is there, the bricks are laid out, however you want to conceptualize it, now you need to build up the pillars of which you will build your life upon. And that's not easy. It's a process. It's a serious process. And it's a process where you have to be willing to accept the fact that things are going to happen that you didn't plan on. And then, more importantly, you have to be willing to accept that there are things that you think that you really want out of life, but you actually don't. It's not even a pipe dream. It's something like, that would be really cool, but it's actually not something that's going to satisfy you. It has no meaning to it. Because, that's another one of the rules. Do what's meaningful, not what's expedient. Life has to have meaning. There has to be a reason that we're doing the things that we're doing. And so you do that by setting goals for yourself. And this isn't if you read a business success book that like a generalized business success book, and it does not tell you to set goals, put the book down. The author's on crack. Not literally, but they're missing a corner. One of the cornerstones is setting goals, and so that's what I did. And I did this at the beginning of this year, because we're coming up to November. I started this in January. And although I am still figuring things out, my life is immensely better now than it had been previous, especially the year prior to that, because the year prior to that was just, even the 2 years prior to that was just a whirlwind of chaos and change. And when things are changing, you can't avoid chaos. It's part and parcel of what's going on. So that is something you're just going to have to accept. But at the same time, you have to know how to flow with the change and make it so that change is beneficial. And I had failed to do that in 16 to 17. And so between 16 and 18, really. And so when 19 rolled around, I said, okay, I've gone through Dr. Peterson's book. I've kind of got a foundation laid out. I've reread Think and Grow Rich. So now I'm going to build my goals. And so I did. And so I laid out 9 goals for myself, and I posted them in a place that I would be forced to look at them even at a glance at least once a day. And actually it's more than that, because I put them on the back of my door. And so when they're on the back of your door, anytime you open and close the door, there they are. You can't avoid them there. And you don't just flip them up out of your way because they're annoying. And so I laid out 9 goals for myself, of which I have achieved the majority of them. And I know that I am not in a position. If I don't accomplish all 9 goals, it's because I wasn't dedicated enough to accomplish all 9 goals. I am responsible for that aspect of things. That doesn't mean I give up on the 9 goals or on the things that I missed. It means that when I go to do the next iteration next year, I make a stronger effort toward accomplishing all 9 of next year's goals. And maybe for you it won't be 9. Maybe it'll be 6. Maybe it'll be 2. Maybe your first goal is just making sure you make your bed every day. And I can't stress enough the importance of doing so. You know, it seems like a small thing, but there was an admiral whose name escapes me. So if you give me a second, I will look it up. Come on. We're doing the lag thing again, aren't we? There we go. Well, I found the videos. Oh, Admiral McRaven, which is an awesome name, by the way. But you make your bed every day, so that's one task you accomplish. And by doing that early in the day, you'll find that it helps your brain organize yourself in a much better fashion, because that one piece of your life has been placed back into order every single morning. And so okay, so you make your bed, and then you follow Dr. Peterson's advice, which the most important thing that I think out of everything that he teaches, the most important thing that he teaches is to clean your room. You clean your room and you make your bed, because it puts your personal space into order. Because when your personal space is in chaos, your brain can't function at the same level it can when it's put together correctly. And I've noticed this recently. Your car is important too, and I didn't realize how important that was until I changed vehicles. So my last vehicle was a Saturn SL2. Small car, really fuel efficient, love that car. Still runs, keeping it as an emergency car, but because of the course that my life had taken up to that point, there's just a lot of crap in it. It's a very chaotic vehicle. I'm not very satisfied with that. It was always a frustration. I I could not figure out how to keep it so that it was not a mess. And to be fair, when I purchased it, it was not in the cleanest of shape, and I don't put that on the person I bought that off. It's just the way sometimes things happen. When I got my Jeep, I resolved to make sure that it always stayed clean. I might have to keep things in it, but it will always be organized. It will always be neat. I'll have a garbage bag. And just in the 3 months that I've had this vehicle, or 2 months technically, I just made the third payment on it, which, by the way, is a revelation. You got to make a freaking car payment. It's the first time I've ever financed a vehicle. All my old vehicles were always cash purchase. There's a certain level of satisfaction of making that payment every month, even though it's a lot of money. Anyway, off topic. The amount of stress I have on a given day, because the car I go to and from work in is clean and organized, and there's no detritus across the vehicle, it's like night and day. It is completely unmeasurable. No, that's not entirely true. It's difficult to measure just how drastic the difference is in how it feels to go through life now that my life is slightly more organized. Other things that help is keeping to a schedule. This doesn't mean you have to obsessively eat the same thing every single day like I have a nasty habit of doing, but it does help to, when you get up, you eat you get up, you take your shower. Immediately after shower, you have breakfast. And then after breakfast, you make your bed. And you pick up your room before you go to work. And maybe you go to work 15 minutes earlier than you otherwise would have to, so you can do things like organize your desk. Or if you need to have that 10 minutes in the break room to have a coffee before you get out there and start interacting with people. And, and I understand that in retail this makes things a little bit harder because it's not quite the same dichotomy as you have if you're working in an office. It's not the same as if you work in a laboratory or in a machine shop. You're always going to have to adapt how you want to do things to the situation that you live in. But try showing up to work 15 minutes early every single day. Like, you want to be at the job site in the building 15 minutes early every single day. Do it for a week and see how it changes how you feel when you start your day out. When you clock in, taking that 10 to 15 minutes sitting in the break room, even if all you do is sit in the break room and just have some water, you'll discover the difference in the stress level that you will have. It'll be immense. Excuse me for a minute. Sorry about that. I had to blow my nose. Wow, I don't know how I sniped him there. But anyway, going back into what I was talking about. So you've organized. So these are all things that you don't necessarily have to do all of them at once. I mean, can it help? Yes, but sometimes such an overwhelming amount of change makes it very difficult to manage iteratively, right? You do so many things different that it just throws your whole world upside down, and then you just stop doing it. So pick one thing. Let's start from the beginning. You get up in the morning and you make your bed. And let's say you do that for a week. Okay, so you've got that piece of your life back into order. 28 days makes a habit, right? Or I think it's 22, but screw it. Let's call it 28. So for month number 1, the goal is to make your bed every day, 7 days a week. And so you do that for, say, January of next year. Okay, so you get through January. And so in February, you say, okay, I have made my bed every day this week. It's time to put my room in order. And so in 28 days, I want to get my room in order and have a method to make sure it is kept in that order every single day once it's done. And it may not be that you get it done on the first day. It may take a few days or even a week for you to get the whole room in order, because let's face it, your room's in chaos because you haven't kept it up. And so you need to make sure that you clean it up, and you have to remind yourself to keep working on it because it's a pain in the ass and you don't want to do it. And so, okay, fine. So you push yourself to do it every single day, and you put some background noise in the back, whether it's music or a TV show. And so it's distracting, but it lets you kind of focus more on what you're doing, and you put your room in order. So in February, you get your whole room clean, and you manage to keep it that way. You don't let the laundry pile up at the foot of the bed, and you don't let the dust accumulate on your collectibles, and you feel better about yourself. And so you're like, okay, this feels kind of good. I walk into my room, and I can walk from the door to the bed without having to avoid a whole bunch of crap. Right? So, okay, you got that piece in order. And so you're still making your bed. And now you're going to maintain your room. And so you say, okay, the next thing I need to do is make sure that my car is in order. Because you spend a lot of time in a vehicle. You go back and forth to work. You go back and forth to the store. You have to carry your groceries in it. You have to, bring your kids places if you have kids. And so you take the vehicle next, and you pull everything out of the car, and you vacuum it, and you shampoo it. This is something you generally do in a day. It'd probably be on a Saturday, right? Or on a day off if you work weekends, which is pretty common. And so you tear the car apart, and you vacuum and you shampoo it, or whatever you want to do, depending on how old the car is. And then you only put back in the car that which absolutely has to be in the car. And you do that, and you pull everything else out, and you don't let it pile. You throw away the things that need to be thrown away, except the things you no longer need to go. And you put the other things that you've just been kind of keeping in the car away. You find a place for them in your basement, or in your storage unit, or in your garage. Oh, wow. So, okay, now you've got your car in order, and so you've got your beds being made, and your room is kept straight, and now your car is being kept straight, and so you say, okay, it's extra stressful for me to show up just in time to clock in, so now I'm going to show up to work 15 minutes early every single day. And that's going to necessitate a change of routine. It takes a certain level of effort to do so. Sorry, at the same time, I still have to maintain other things. One of the downsides to doing extended videos is sometimes you have to multitask. So you rebuild your morning routine around making sure you're at work no later than 15 minutes before you have to clock in. And so now you've got to get yourself in. Because you want to get there 15 minutes early, you have to build a schedule around your morning. And so that forces you to really think about what you're doing in the morning and how you structure that time. And maybe there's already things that force you to do things in a certain way. If you have kids, they got to get on the bus, so you have to get up at a certain time, and you have to make sure that they're ready to go every morning, and that they are prepared to be ready for school at the time that the bus arrives. And so you get them ready for school, and then let's say they have to be at the bus for 7:10. So you get up at 6 o'clock and you take your shower, and that takes you to like 6:20 or 6:30, and you get your coffee and if you drink coffee, and because let me tell you, I mainline coffee, and then you get your breakfast at the same time you're having coffee, and you can make sure the kids have breakfast, whether they're old enough to get their own breakfast or you have to make it for them. And so you do that, and you all eat, and you have your coffee, and so your brain is starting to put itself back into order. And then you put the kids on the bus, and let's for the sake of argument, I'm going to use kind of my morning schedule as a way to build a framework upon which you can adjust your own schedule for when you get ready for work. I'm one of the fortunate ones where these days I go to work for 9 a.m. Or my work day starts at 9 a.m. And so I get up at 6, and I take my shower, and I get my son breakfast, and I get myself breakfast, and I get him on the bus, because he has to be on the bus by 7. The bus rolls in about 7:15, so he has to be out there by 7:10. And so I make sure that he's got all his stuff together, and make sure that he has set him up for the most successful day that an 11-year-old can have. And so, okay, fine. So I get him out to the bus, and then I get myself together. And if I haven't eaten breakfast before he gets on the bus, I eat breakfast immediately after I send him out to the bus. And most weeks it works like that. And so, okay, so I take care of him, and I get as soon as he's out to the bus, now it's time for me to put myself together for the day. So I go and I make my bed. I put something on as background noise, whether it's yesterday's news or it's a lecture from Dr. Peterson or what have you. I put that on YouTube, and I make my bed. On the days that... Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I make my bed, and I put my day together, and I brush my teeth, and then I put on the remainder of my suit. So I've got to work in a tie. So I put my tie on, I put my vest on, and so this is me putting my day together from the ground up, right? So okay, I've got that together, and then if it's a Tuesday or if it's a Friday, I then record I look up what I'm going to talk, or decide what I'm going to talk about in McBain Moments, and I do my McBain Moments video. And if it's not a Tuesday or a Friday, then I usually take the time to kind of think through things and put my day together, and there you have it. And so between 8 and 8:15, I've got my day together. I put the things I need to bring to work in my briefcase, and I go to work, keeping in mind that I don't have to be there until 9. If for whatever reason I was not able to get breakfast when I was working with my son, which does happen sometimes more frequently than others. Around the holidays, it's gonna because I'm prone to suffering from insomnia. I sometimes take that extra hour in the morning to get a little extra sleep. It's not the preferred way to do things, but it's something that sometimes you have to. It is a challenge that you have to be willing to adapt to handle. And so okay, so he's on the bus, and I go to work, And if I have to stop for breakfast, I'll grab it, and then I will go to work and eat breakfast. And then generally in the mornings, I will walk. And I try to walk a mile every morning. And if I don't walk it in the morning, then I will always walk it, or not always, but the majority of the time I will walk it on my lunch break. It will happen one of those 2 times almost every day. And I try to keep that down to a routine. And it's important to keep that down to a routine because that exercise helps me to organize my thoughts, because I always end up listening to an audiobook while I walk. Occasionally I'll listen to YouTube videos if it's more of a lecture format. Like I would be willing to listen to one of Dr. Peterson's lectures. I listen to the Rubin Report, or to a Joe Rogan podcast, or to Dan Locke's Boston the Bentley, which is kind of what inspired the whole McBain Moments thing. But either way, I will use it as an opportunity to kind of put my day together. Okay, so the walk's over, and I've got my coffee. I get everything ready for my day, and then my day begins. And if everything has worked the way it's supposed to, then the day begins well and fairly ordered rather than total chaos. And the amount of structure that I am able to put around that day has an immense amount of benefit to my psychological well-being. And that's the way I structure my day. Don't try to just like photocopy it, and don't think that I'm completely nuts, although I am, but for different reasons. Utilize that as a way to kind of frame around the way you put yourself together, and and you can decide that, you know, the advice I'm giving you is totally bogus. If you've stayed this long, thank you, because I'm sure you're listening to me going, I came here for Entropia and you're talking to me about philosophy. Shut the hell up. But if you think about it, we as video gamers, we occupy a profound niche in the life of humans. Video games did not exist 50 years ago. Well, actually, at this point, it might have been 50 years, but hang on. When did... We'll consider Pong the first true video game. 1972. So it was either Pong or Break It that was the first true video game, because it was played on an old 70s computer. And so the 70s really were the initial age of the video game. So that's when it really first came out. And so your Gen Xers, your late Gen Xers, your early millennials, the Zennials as they call them, or what used to be called Gen Y. So your millennials born in the 80s like me. We have seen what used to be a subculture that was looked down upon become mainstream. We spend hours of our lives in digital space. It is our home, almost more than the real world is, for better or for worse. Our brains spend as much time in the digital world, if anything, as much as it does the analog one. And so the skills that we've developed in order to make sure that we are the best players of the games that we play that we can be are extremely applicable to real life if we are willing to take the time and dedication to apply it to real life. And the best example of this are those of us who play this game here. We play Entropia Universe. It is the grindiest fucking game in the world. I dare you to find a game that is grindier than this one. Good luck. And so, take the tenacity that you put into playing this game. Take the lessons learned, the patience necessary, and apply it to other aspects of your life. And you will find that those aspects of your life will become iteratively better over time. And it won't even necessarily be a slow change. It'll be quick. Or if it starts slow, it'll quickly ramp up to be much faster, because that's the Pareto distribution, right? That is the reason that things are always so unevenly distributed across a population. You don't have to deal with the fact that I lost my train of thought there. The more you do things, the better, the easier it's going to become, and which is going to make your success become be acquired more faster. As you accumulate success, more success will come to you. It's the Michael principle. It's the Pareto distribution. There's a dozen names for it across time. The Michael principle it's laid out, and it's a brutal fact, and it's a law. It is a socio-physical law. There is no getting around it. And the term it goes to those who have everything, all will be given. From those who have nothing, everything will be taken. And I know I completely misquoted that. But basically it means that the faster you start to, or when you start to build things, things will naturally begin to build faster over time. And when you stop, or when you let things deteriorate, it will quickly deteriorate faster and faster until you lose absolutely everything. I think that particular concept is probably one of the hardest things that we have to contend with in the world. Because it's not easy. And it's not fun. Understanding that because there is a natural law that assures that those who find their first step to success are going to have much less difficulty making the second. And it's geometric in design, but it has to do with, I think it fundamentally has to do with the confidence you get from that first success. That's why Peterson likes using lobsters as an example, because the mechanism that creates that is ancient. It's older than trees. 350 million years. This mechanism has always worked the same way. There are thousands upon millions of examples. It's how evolution works. And so you have to decide, okay, well, if that's the case, then how do I make sure that I am one of the ones who iteratively continue to succeed? And the answer it's not a simple answer, because there's all kinds of shit you have to contend with. And it's something that I've struggled with too in my life, and I think that It's one of the things that, as we continue to get more complex in the way we live life, and as things get easier for us iteratively, because that's the goal of humans, is to make our own lives as easy as humanly possible, because life is a struggle. Just surviving is an immense struggle that we don't even really appreciate, because we don't have to worry about things here, especially here in the West, where life is insanely easy compared to even 4 generations ago. You go back 100 years, and the mere act of survival was geometrically more difficult, by a whole order of magnitude more difficult, just making sure that you could survive. No, it's 2019. In 1919, 100 years ago, World War I had just ended. We're coming upon one of the most prosperous times in human history. We were still rebuilding from the war. It was the interwar period, and I think that's a mistake that we make is kind of addressing the 2 world wars as separate entities. They're really not. It's one war that was fought over 2 time periods with 2 very distinct methodologies. But that's a whole nother conversation, so I'm not going to get into that. But the amount of, even in medical science, 100 years ago, there are things we would have to amputate for that we can resolve with microsurgery today. 100 years ago, a computer did not exist. There was no radar, or if there was, it was extremely rudimentary, but I think that radar was an invention that came out in World War II. The motor car was rarer than the horse. Cavalry was still was considered militarily a militarily vital type of soldier. I kind of lost the way to speak that. My words are starting to fail me, but I've been speaking for almost an hour now. The world has changed immensely in the last 100 years. Like night and day. If you were to show someone from 100 years ago the wonders and marvels we have today, they would think it was magic. They would understand that it's science, but they would think that it would work to them like magic. And so, as we move into the future, as we push forward, it's going to be vitally important that we keep ourselves together. You know, it's Dr. Peterson's contention, and I agree with him. You have to find the heaviest burden that you can carry and bear it. Even if that burden is nothing more than putting your own self together so that you are a human that other people can interact with in a way that does not make their lives more stressful. And so that when you encounter the stress of other people's lives, because they're not going to be as put together as you, maybe they are more put together as you are, but maybe they're not. And for those that are less put together than you are, maybe you can serve as as something for them to look at and say, I want to do the same thing. And then maybe they'll start looking for ways to put their own lives together. And then maybe iteratively over time, we can make this whole world that we live in a little bit better. We can put a little bit more order into the chaos that has come into our world. I gotta say, if you're still with me, I really appreciate it. I didn't mean to lecture. Although I have to admit, I kind of miss being a guest lecturer. I have done guest lectures, not on philosophy or human development, but on, of all things, finance. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed doing it until after the opportunity had fled. And maybe that's the lesson you can take from me, is appreciate the things that you find that you enjoy and look for other opportunities to indulge in them. Here he is. We are taking down the cannon. It is going so much better. I think we gained some shrapnel too, that's good. And 3 boxes. Which is also good, because I have the feeling this is like a 150 head freaking repair bill. Oh, I don't want that to be in the way. Knowing my luck, I'd accidentally click on it. That's happened before. And down you go. So we're at 3148 points. Let's take a quick look and see where I stand currently. I know I'm nowhere near the top 10, but that's fine. Scores. Has Loris finished yet? I don't think he's done his 3rd section yet. No, because he'd be up in this range. And currently we are 38th? 39th. We're going to knock 39 out. I can't guarantee we're going to knock 38 out, but we're somewhere in between these 3. And I still have 4 hours and 45 minutes left, so we'll see where that brings us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, 1 subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Guys, I really appreciate all the support. You all have a wonderful night.